Hello, Mick. How are you?
Good, good. Got up this morning, got the run done. It's actually the first cold morning we've had in Melbourne for a while. It's the weather here has been crazy for May, and got up this morning and we had a cold one. So got up and I struggle every morning getting up and going for a run. As much as I do it, it still sucks, and that's why I do it because it's hard. So doing well, got that done, and ready to dive in and chat about what I love most, and that's
Oh, you're still doing
water.
better than I am. It's cold up here and I just stay in bed.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
the best part was I was telling my dad how cold it was and he sends me a photo. Mum and dad live in Tassie, sends me a photo of snow-capped mountains and goes, "Bit chilly here, Dal."
Yeah.
So that was a bit
So,
of a reality check for me.
you do not have the right to say it's cold up where you are at the moment.
Definitely not. Not when 80% of the population is still swimming, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's get straight into it, Mick. My whole Twitter feed has been absolutely blasted lately with the sale of Rosehill. What is going on? There still feels like there's so many questions unanswered.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that, you know, assets in racing such as Rosehill Gardens are priceless. That's the first thought I had is, you know, the potential of removing something like Rosehill Garden. You're not just getting rid of a piece of land, you're not getting rid of a grandstand, the stables and a racecourse. You're completely eliminating, the very fabric of this sport. The history of this sport is already an aspect I feel, that for a while has kind of, been left behind, and it's something that we're already the new generation can start to, forget about, and that comes due to the fact I think, they're trying to reinvent the wheel all the time, which is good. We love, a new next gen feel on things, but the external pressures of, financials, of gambling, they're all starting to have their effect. And, the fact that it's getting to chatting about removing one of the premier and most important assets in racing is beyond me. And I heard Mick Price say on racing radio earlier in the week that he doesn't know a single person in racing who thinks this is a good idea. And he rather thought it was, disgusting to even consider this. And, to think a proposal to replace Rosehill with a Warwick Farm upgrade, for me just shows that there's one clear driver for this, and it's
Yeah.
financial.
To me, that's just absurd. Like, removing every other factor out of this, I don't know a single younger fan that would want to go all the way out to Liverpool to watch the Golden Slipper. That's my first point. Second point is that Rosehill was redeveloped not even 10 years ago to become not only a premier racing destination, but a training facility. It is one of the best and only purpose built facilities with the multi story barns, those huge stables, and then we've got the great swimming pool, track access. It just seems ridiculous to take that away, re spend the money somewhere else. And then, even second of all, where is everyone going to go? If they don't build another track, is everyone going to go out to Warwick Farm? Is everyone going to go out to Hawkesbury? Is everyone going to go to Randwick? Are there enough boxes? Are there enough housing? How is that all actually going to work and be feasible for the next generation of trainers, owners, and ground staff?
Well, I think when you put a figure on anything that says $5 billion, it's really easy to start forgetting about the people and really start forgetting about the ins and outs of this industry, and all the impacts that such a move and change is going to have. You only have to look to the biggest names in racing to get their opinion. I mentioned Mick Price already. I've seen footage of Gay Waterhouse pleading her case. That's enough for me. Those are the people who have been involved in this sport for long enough and know the impact that something like this is going to have not only on the people, but as I mentioned, the very fabric of this sport. It's a massive no for me.
Yeah, 100%. And even looking at it from the perspective that we have, neither of us are members with the ATC, and the vote only goes to the members. And we've seen that big battle on social media of the members versus the ATC, supposed misinformation from both ends, and just that constant drive to push each agenda. And we even saw yesterday they proposed the ATC that should the sale go through, that members will get up to 5 years free membership and then, of course, $1,000 to spend over the bar of food. Are they taking the right approach in this? They're offering so much with so little that is actually certain about the proposal. It seems like everything's good, it's great, it's flashy, but what are we actually getting when Rosehill does potentially sell?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's the question I think everyone's asking. And I'll be shocked to see a majority vote in favour of getting rid of Rosehill. I'll be tipping if we're going to start talking about tipping a strong response from those who have the right to vote in favour of saving that precinct.
Yeah, I would personally, I'm all save Rosehill, so let's hope that that is the outcome there. Now, the other question that is on everyone's lips, how much is Bella Nipotina selling for tonight at the English chairman's sale?
Well, would it be silly for me to say it depends on how generous you long are feeling, considering
I was going to say the same.
considering they buy absolutely everything. But yeah, that is the question on everyone's mind ahead of tonight, and what a way to kick off, a weekend of sport. I feel like Thursday for me now, and it has been for a while. Thursday for me is the start of the sporting week. It's Friday. It used to be called Friday Junior, but Thursday's got its own brand now. We get to
Yep.
down here in Melbourne nestle in and watch the footy, and what a way to kick it off as well with the chairman sales on for Inglis. And I think the CEO of the sale of Inglis, Sebastian Hutch, said it best himself. He said uh, you know this catalogue is out of this world, and it is. You look at the names: Bella Nipotina, Amelia's Jewel, I Am Me, Royal Merchant, Ceruleo Miss. There's the prize money amongst those horses. Yeah, those four simple words from Sebastian Hutch picture it nicely. And as I said, whoever has the most money and whoever I think it's too long, however generous they're feeling tonight, I think it's going to be a big figure. And what a horse, Bella Nipotina.
Yeah. I've got a bit of a trivial question for you here. How do you personally feel about these big enterprises like Yulong coming in and dominating the scene? Because to me, on one hand, it's great. There's a lot of money coming in, a lot of interest from a fan base, seeing how these horses are going to go. They've got a lot of great horses coming from overseas that are boosting our racing over here. But when one ownership and breeding operation seems to have the monopoly over the entire enterprise, how will that actually affect our game in the long run?
Yeah, true. I think, look, until there's, some sort of rules that come in for them to stop it, I don't know how to feel about it, because they're not doing anything illegal. And what I'm hoping for is that it kind of generates, more competition at that top level to prevent the monopoly. But at the same time, there's no reason why syndications can't come together and form a bigger one and be able to compete with Yulong. But then again, what effect does that have on the future itself? Having not only one major syndication and ownership group and stud farm that's operating as one giant enterprise, but multiple of those. And what does that do to the humble trainer down the bottom end? The questions I ask myself all the time, and if I'm being totally honest, I don't have too much of an answer or a solution just yet. I think, and I don't think many people do, because in Australia we haven't seen that just yet, and it's happening for the first time now, well, on this level anyway. And but yeah, it seems to be one name at the moment buying everything, and that's Yulon.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, I want you to put your breeder's hat on for a second. I'm really putting you on the spot here.
Sure.
So, with the current history that we have seen in Australia, we are still looking for that wonder mare to become a wonder broodmare. Now, if I gave you a couple of million to drop on Bella Nipotina, would you spend that money on her, knowing that in recent history, the likes of Mackay Diva, Black Caviar, even Sunline are yet to produce that top quality elite level foal?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think even when you talk about the yearlings, like you can have the best bloodlines all you want, and you can and people will throw money at those, but there is absolutely no certainty with anything in this game. There's obviously good indicators of good bloodlines, but it's a total mystery. It's a total mystery. And Bella Nipotina, you look at her, she's been a wonderful horse and a great racehorse, but she's no real standout in terms of how she looks. And so look, how do you put a price on that? other than the fact that she's won over $20 million prize money. So, uh, look, the answer is don't give me the money because I don't know.
Give it to you along instead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, one thing that we do know is that Giga Kicks rivals will be absolutely fuming as they head towards the Goodwood. That lightweight, how on earth did he get away with it?
Yeah, well, I've got mixed opinions on this one, actually. It's obviously sparked plenty of debate. We're talking about a horse that's won an Everest, multiple Group Ones, regularly takes part in the biggest sprint races here in Australia, against our best sprinters. And, to top it off, to only look back to last spring on Caulfield Cup Day, Giga Kick was runner-up in last year's Everest. I think that says enough about his recent credentials in Australian sprinting. But what's causing debate is that in the Goodwood, there's runners like Volcanic Express, whose last win came in open class at Oakbank. And that horse, Volcanic Express, gets 54 and a half kilos. And even more curious, Climbing Star for Philip Stokes. She's in no rich vein of form. She's a Group One winner, but she finished 12th in the Robert Sangster just gone. And, she's been asked to carry the top weight of 56 and a half. But on the flip side, I think Clayton Douglas summed it up pretty well. Giga Kick's record's obviously elite and, Everest's Group Ones. His resume is better than the rest of the field by the length of the Morphettville Straight. But he hasn't won in almost 2 years to the date. I think the last time he won might have been, correct me if I'm wrong, the Doomben
Doomben 10,000, was it?
That's
Yeah.
May 13th, 2023. And then in that 2 year spell since his last win, he also spent 12 months on the sidelines with an injury. And his last run was Champions Day at Flemington. That's 6 months ago. So there's definitely a case for him to be handed a 54 and a half in those circumstances, even if it doesn't feel entirely right on paper. And anyone who says Giga Kick isn't well in the weights at the Goodwood on the weekend is dreaming. But honestly, I don't think it matters that much over 1200 meters. 1200 meters is weight the be all and end all. Giga Kick's still an even money shot for mine if he went up with 56 and a half kilos. So, those who are in shock by the 54 and a half couldn't have had their opinions swayed too much by an extra 2 kilos. It's a funny one. It's a funny one. There's definitely an overreaction for mine, but I'd love to see the markets if he did go up 56 and a half kilos. And I think the punters wouldn't be that swayed. And I think he'd be very, very short still.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, overall, what do you think is more important when it comes to handicapping? A horse's total resume or that recent form, like we were saying?
Got to be the recent form. It's got to be the recent form and the recent story of the horse. And I think that's why the handicapper's gone with the 54 and a half. What do I know about handicapping anyway? Like this is the job, this is the job of the handicapper. And they've come up with 54 and a half. And I guess all that does is make it a shorter price. And the punters can't win as much money if Giga Kick wins the Group One. So yeah, definitely recent form and the story of the horse in recent times, how many starts it's had, all those factors. But if you're looking at the total resume, Giga Kick should be carrying 60 and a half. Like it's that far clear, but that's not how it works. So I'm sticking with that recent form, and yeah, he's still got to beat a good group of horses in the Goodwood. He's gone up short, but who knows where he's been? As I said, he hasn't been in the track for 6 months. So, but one thing I do know about Clayton Douglas is, he won't be taking Giga Kick to the track if he wasn't ready to roar. And I think that's why he's gone up such a short price.
Yeah, most definitely. Even Everest Day, I remember we were down there and I looked at him in the yard and I was like, God, this horse just doesn't look ready yet. I was looking at him. He just still looked like he was carrying that little bit of condition. He was a bit hairy in the coat. He got himself a touch worked up and I was like, he's not going to be ready. And sure enough, Clayton proved me wrong, had the horse perfectly placed. Obviously got beaten by Bella Nipotina, but even then, but on Champions Day, huge run again. And he always just places his horses so perfectly. And especially a horse like Giga Kick, he won't be taking his chances, like you said.
Yeah, and if you put a jockey like Mark Zara on his back as well, an extra couple of lengths, how good's he going? And he claimed both the Group Ones in Adelaide last week, and he might just do it again. Mark's up.
Yeah, he's definitely made Adelaide his own, hasn't he, this season? Now, what about the leg up that Dan Maher has gotten with those two Singapore horses? He heads to Caulfield this weekend with a huge card.
Yeah, I had a pretty good, outsider's glimpse into the horror show that was that whole shutdown of racing in Singapore last year. For some involved, like my brother Patrick, who was the race caller there at Singapore at the time, it wasn't a disaster. It was, good for Pat. He could pivot and find another job pretty quickly, which he did. Over in Dubai now, which I know you spent a bit of time with Pat over there, and just at the
Yeah, he definitely landed on his feet in Dubai, didn't he?
absolutely. And, but for him, watching for many of his colleagues and his friends, especially, the Aussie trainers who have to totally rethink their entire lives, not their lives as a trainer, but their lives as, dads, mums, their whole families are there. They had to uproot everything and move. It's kind of heartbreaking. And,
Yeah.
the Singapore decision forced, a complete reset for someone like Dan Maher, who, overnight, it was overnight, careers and opportunities and everything were turned down. Now, we're starting to see now, with Caulfield ahead of us this weekend, the results of that upheaval. And, trainers like Dan Maher making a fresh start back in Australia. He set up a developing stable down at Pakenham. He's got 25 horses in work. 6 of those were from his crop over in Singapore. And he's already chalked up a couple of winners, but the adjustments, haven't been made without heaps of challenges. I think, you got to get your head around the rating system, which is different, how you can get your horses to drop in rating. And I think, he's mentioned he's had a bit of trouble with that. And then obviously, in Singapore, you're only working with, a similar track. Whereas in Victoria, every track has its own character, its own sharp turn, its own different, circumference. And he's got to get used to that. Yeah, and of course the freezing cold. I don't think, Packers been hit with those winters yet, and I can assure you it's very different to Singapore. And I know Dan's probably spent enough time in the cold to realize what those 3 a.m. icy mornings are like, but it's definitely different to Singapore. But this Saturday, Mar's going to saddle up 3 of his former Singapore gallopers at Caulfield, headlined by Lim Sol Toro, a horse that I know from its Singapore days. Lim Sol Toro was almost like an up and coming star over in Singapore. He's knocked off.
If it wasn't for Cozzy, he would have been the champion.
Yeah, he's knocked off Lim's Kosciuszko a couple of times. He won the Singapore Derby, he finished second in the Singapore Gold Cup. And he steps out to 1,400 metres this weekend with 3 jump outs under his belt. And, to me, that says that, he's ready to rock. So we've spoken about a lot of comeback, this week with, Pride of Jenny, Giga Kicks coming back this weekend. But Dan Maher's story is something bigger than that. I think it's a comeback. It's a rebuild from the ground up. And that's what racing's about. These stories, and not only for Dan, but his brother Chris, who was a massive part in helping him get going. So this is a special story, I believe. And I love to see, as I said, the fruits of this upheaval are starting to show. And let's hope that Lim Sol Toro, it's a tough race, but
It is, isn't it?
yeah, it's a very tough race.
Yeah, I'm with you this weekend. My highlight will be watching the team go to Caulfield. Obviously, we've got quite a close connection in our household too with the Lims horses. My father-in-law Mick was the racing manager for the Boss for a long while, so we've all been on the edge of our seats to see when they would come back to the races. So I'm pumped to see Saltoro step up to the 1,400 metres in this. I think it's going to be a great race for him. When it comes to Ida, I'm a bit unsure here. Obviously, the weight definitely will help. And I think as a whole, this team is really going to benefit from the handicapping scale. Like we were saying, similar to Giga Kick, these horses, especially when you look at Kosciuszko, how many Group 1s did he win? He won 10. Saltoro won 2. And they are only domestic Singapore Group 1s. So when they're both going to target the Stradbroke this season, how are they going to benefit against some of the best sprinters that we have over here when it comes to the weights? When over in Singapore, they were being outweighted every time because they were the dominant horses. So I truly think that them being here, should they adjust perfectly to everything? Obviously, we've got so many factors. Turf, conditions like you were saying, the humidity factor's completely gone for these poor horses until they come to Queensland. Even floating to the races, adjusting to the new feed systems. If they can overcome all of that and race really competitively in Australia, it proves just how tough these horses are. And most of them come out of New Zealand. So shout out to our New Zealand bred horses for their durability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's all of it's a big challenge for the Mars. It's going to take time to get used to. Like, I think, you probably would have expected Lim Salvatore to come back first up over 1,200 meters, but
Yeah.
they've found a 1,400-meter race that suits. And I think that's why you've got three jump outs under his belt, which, yeah, puts him in a really good position. I think LOU's got the inside draw, which is a horse that loves to lead, and War Machine's going to be hitting the line late. But it's Slim Salvatore is going to be right in this race. And I think, if they can get the chocolates, it might be one of the racing stories of the weekend. And I'll be tuning in for race 8 at Caulfield, and I'll be cheering home Lim Salvatore for sure.
I'm with you there, and I think the rest of our household will be also. Now, talking about sort of who we're backing this weekend and whatnot, there's been a lot of hustle and bustle in the office this week. We are doing a bit of a soft launch with LEXI, who is an AI tipping service. Now, in general, the racing industry, we've really embraced that AI, which personally, from working on the ground in the stables, I really liked, with the use of e-trackers, that sort of tracking system, even with Prism, where you can get notifications if your horse's temperature's up, down, feed, everything's accounted for. But it's met with a lot of mixed emotions, that AI, particularly with tipping. Mick, when we first brought the idea of Racing X's own tipping service to you through AI, how did you feel?
I thought it was awesome. Oh, the first thing I thought about was I can't wait to bring Lexi along to the pub with the boys and have that extra mate sitting next to you who's got their own opinion. And usually when you go to the pub with the boys, it's everyone's got their own opinion. There might be a field full of 8 horses, and there might be 4 horses that you're trying to think. But if you give Lexi a nudge, who's got absolute access to all the data and all the information, and you don't have to do that extra thinking, and it might provide that, it might agree with one of your opinions, and that might be the defining factor. So I think it's fantastic. I use AI every single day now, believe it or not. I use it for scheduling. I use it to help with small problems. I'm a bit of a nerd and sometimes like to know random facts about history and stuff like that. So I'm using AI all the time. So it's seamless for me bringing AI into my racing antics and my punting antics, and I think it's super exciting. And every single time I check my Instagram, there's a new post that Lexi's found another winner. So she's gotten off to a good start, but I think AI is the new way of the world. Whether you're scared of it or not, it's a reality. It's here, and it's having an effect on the punting game, and she's getting winners. It matters.
I can't wait to hear what the bookies think eventually in the long run with all of these different AI tipping services. I know we're certainly not the first, and we definitely won't be the last platform to release our own AI service. So I'm really curious to see that overall reaction from the bookies. Is it going to be shut down? Are they going to regulate it? How can we dismantle the tote through AI is the big question, I suppose.
Yeah, it's something that I'm not going to have to worry about. But I'm team Lexi all the way. As I said, I'm going to be bringing Lexi to the pub next time, and I'm sure that everyone involved in that experience is going to be very much on team Lexi too, and she's tipping the card.
As long as she's bringing home winners, everyone's team Lexi. That argument, though, of the racing purists versus, us modernists and what we want to see in the industry has even extended this week when we look at the Kentucky Derby. Our Kentucky Derby winner Sovereignty has been ruled out of Triple Crown, and it's brought up a lot of questions about whether that model needs to be reevaluated. Obviously, the Triple Crown, Kentucky Derby, Preakness, Belmont. Do we spread these races out to make it more accessible?
Yeah, well, I think it's the second time in 4 years that the owner and trainer of a Derby champion, the Kentucky Derby champion, have opted to skip the Preakness in favour of the Belmont Stakes later in June. And I think it's clearly showing that, horse racing's changed from its heyday. When Secretariat took out the Triple Crown, they were running every couple of weeks. It was just normal practice for them. So these horses were used to these practices and being able to back up, which not many trainers like to do with their top horses these days, especially their 3-year-olds. So, and then there's breeding as well, that, you don't want to work a horse too hard if it's going to go off to breeding, especially that at that ripe age. And The trainer of Sovereignty said they're going to do what's best for the horse, and they've worked out what's best for the horse, and that's to not back up. And that's been, this conversation isn't new. This is not a new
Mm,
conversation. It took from 1978 to American Pharaoh's Triple Crown in 2015. That's 37 years. It took 37 years for a horse to win the Triple Crown again from 1978. And then the fact that Justify was able to do it again in 2018 really shut down those talks of should we adjust the system? Should we adjust the way the Triple Crown's structured and scheduled? But 2018 is now 7 years ago. So this conversation is starting to reignite. And I think the answer is yes, they need to change and they need to at least talk about it. And I'm sure they are. And there's going to be change for sure because the Triple Crown,
yeah.
just as time goes on, it's going to be tougher and tougher to win if the trends of racing continue the way they are.
I completely agree. And I am surprised that there hasn't been more of a debate on this, particularly in recent years. When we look at the Triple Crown, like look at the Race for the Crown series on Netflix and just how much of a following that has brought to the sport. And now that sovereignty is out of contention, how many people might tune out for the rest of the races now because they know that no one this year is winning the Triple Crown? So if we were to adjust the scheduling, even to be, 4 weeks apart for each, the Kentucky Derbies run the first weekend of May. The Preakness, is run the first weekend of June, and then the Belmont run the first weekend of July. 4 weeks between runs. That's 4 weeks, first of all, for the punters to save up their money to come to the races again. That's more time for that engagement between each race to know how the horse is tracking along, get that following through social media. And then you're just going to have a better result overall. If you can have a horse winning the Triple Crown, obviously it's a prestigious thing and you kind of lose that edge the more horses win the Triple Crown. It is elusive for a reason, don't get me wrong. But that storyline that it creates in the media and the amount of people that might see the Triple Crown winner for the first time and that's them hooked next season, to me it's vital for the industry.
Absolutely, but I still don't think, even a month between those races is probably long enough.
Yeah, most trainers over there go 6 weeks between
As I
runs.
said, yeah, the money with breeding and the risk that you're taking sometimes, the breaks are very relative to the horse. Every horse is different. Some horses don't pull up better than others, especially over those races and at that age too. It's taking look, it's hard. You've got to almost kind of rebrand the whole thing because
Yeah.
as you said, you use the word elusive. It's going to be harder and harder and harder to catch. Even if you put those breaks out to a month between races, I still think that you're going to have issues with promoting this Triple Crown, the trace for the Triple Crown. You might not see another one for 50 years. There was a 37-year break before American Pharaoh won it. So, maybe winning a couple of Triple Crowns being, obtained in this two in the space of 4 years kind of made people believe again, and maybe they've gone too hard at the idea of the Triple Crown again. They've brought in the show, like you said. So, it's peaks and troughs, and it's so unpredictable. So, that's a complex issue. Again, don't get me involved. I think it's stand back and watch from a distance, and I'll have my opinion. But it might not be something we see again in our lifetime. So
Yeah, it's a scary thought that too. And even like you were saying, I don't want to be involved. Like I was having a look at the scheduling today. And if you push back the Belmont, then it affects the rest of the 3-year-old summer season over there, which is huge racing in the lead up then to the Breeders' Cup. So it just seems to be this constant problem that I think potentially a lot of people in the industry, same as us, don't want to deal with it. Not my problem. Someone else can come around and fix it later. So
yeah.
going to be very interesting to see where that
Or
lands.
do they just, is it as simple as just backing off the promotion of the Triple Crown and seeing how you can rebrand that? Just, there's nothing wrong with having, three amazing races and putting a little bit less pressure on the horses trying to claim all three. Put a bit more emphasis on them being individual events, put more into the Kentucky Derby as its own race rather than being a part of this, elusive Triple Crown. Who knows? Time will tell because it's definitely a problem and they're going to have to start putting a lot more time and effort into it to find a solution because it's such a big market and it's such a big racing day. We spoke about it earlier in the week, how amazing that production is of the entire event and the way that the Americans do things. And, the way that they do things will probably result in a pretty good solution. They've got smart minds when it comes to sport over in that country.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, I'm going to finally let you talk about what you've been wanting to talk about all day. The boy from Perth is seeking a world title boil over. Tell me all about UFC 315.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, anytime there's a UFC pay-per-view card, I'm up and about. I've been up and about for a while about this. I think it was a long time ago. It was Blue Diamond Week was the when they announced this fight. There was a bunch of fights that the UFC announced, and one of them was that Jack Dalla is going to be fighting for the belt against Bilal Muhammad. But when there's an Aussie on the main card, let alone fighting for UFC gold, which we get to see this weekend, my full focus is locked in on this. No disrespect to the superb Group 1 racing in Walkerville. I know your beloved Gold Coast turf track has group racing returning, and even the showdown in the footy on Saturday night, which is one of my favourite footy games of the year. But let's be real, it's Jack Della Maddalena's weekend. UFC 315 in Montreal against Bilal Muhammad. And, if I'm being totally honest, it's not exactly an amazing card overall. You've got legends like Jose Aldo and Benoit Saint-Denis bringing the action. You've got Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso, who are two of the best female fighters in the world on the card in their respective fights. But it's solid, but it's not an all-time lineup. But make no mistake, it's huge for us Aussie fans. Jack Dalla's riding a 17 fight win streak, and I'm backing him to get it done. And when he lifts that UFC gold on Sunday, he's going to join, Robert Whittaker, Alexander Volkanovski as Aussies to be Australian, UFC championships. And Bilal Muhammad, if I'm really trying to look at it, analysing the fight, he hasn't felt boxing like Jack Della Maddalena is. He hasn't felt body shots and work to the body like Jack Della. He's Bilal's incredibly well rounded, but so is Jack. Take him down all you want, but he's got a good ground game. So, it's going to be a war, no doubt. And as you can tell, I'm so pumped. I'm so pumped for this fight. It's getting me G'd up talking about it. But yeah, there's going to be an Aussie flag waving in Montreal at the end of this fight. I'm confident in Jack Della's ability, and yeah, he's gonna bring gold home. I'm so G'd up. Let's go.
Seeing how pumped you are right now, I want to know from Thursday to Sunday, what is your ultimate weekend of sports?
Ooh. Yeah, well, it does.
If you could pick the lineup for each to
Does
perfectly
start.
time with your
All right.
lifestyle.
All right. Well, Thursday night you want to kick off with a big all Victorian match at the MCG. Let's do a Collingwood Geelong into a
Ooh.
Friday night Swannies win up at the SCG against the Bombers. Actually, the Swans and Bombers are playing this week. I'm from Essendon. When you're from Essendon, you're either with them or you hate them. And the Swannies are playing the Bombers this week. So yeah, getting a win over them on a Friday night. And then Saturday, you'd have to say hitting a big quaddie at Flemington or at Caulfield down here in Melbourne into the UFC on a Sunday. Jack Della Maddalena winning gold, or one of the Aussies winning gold into Oscar Piastri winning the F1. I think that sounds like my ultimate
That was a
sporting.
pretty clear-cut answer from you there. No
I've thought about it.
hesitation.
I've thought about it. I dream about those weekends, especially hitting the quaddie down here in Melbourne. I can't remember the last time I hit a quaddie.
Oh, it's near impossible, isn't it?
I'm
A punter's nightmare. Now, you briefly touched on all of the action down in South Australia, but we desperately need to get into it. There's been headlines everywhere. And just before we jumped on air, I heard that Willie Rioli actually won't take his place with Port Adelaide. Talk us through everything that's been going on.
Yeah, well, firstly, I think it's such a big story because the Showdown returns on Saturday night. It's and for the first time since 2019, the Crows are headliners favourites in the 57th edition, and it's always a very fiery clash. The rivalry's huge. Yeah, but the Crows' list and recent results have them well placed for this to be a bit of a landslide. But the last time the Power came into a heated rivalry was against the Hawks back in Gather Round. And, the Hawks were the hottest team in the league at that time. Port were looking horrific. and they just absolutely thrive off that emotion. They have the harder edge, and they deliver the biggest win of their year. Um, but yeah, they've got a really, really fiery edge. It's they love the niggle, they love the confrontation, and Willie Rioli is always a big part of that. He's a player that sparks lots of, or he kicks a lot of goals. His momentum swings are everything about Rioli, but yeah, in our game, there's no place for threats, and the AFL has recognised that at the moment. Players have been fined for sticking the middle finger up to opponents and to the crowd, and yeah, the initial reaction from the AFL when a threat was passed out was and to have no ban was there was a bit of an uproar. So
Mm.
yeah, Willie Rowley won't be taking place, and he does add that fuel to the fire. So Port Adelaide are gonna they've had that fiery approach, and yeah, it's going to be a different game without Willie. But I think Matthew Nicks, the coach of the Crows, he's been very, very deliberate this year about making sure his team approaches the game the same way, no matter the competition. And I thought that it could have gone either way with Willie Rioli playing. Were the power going to use him to kind of get under the skin and get under the structure of the Crows? Or was it going to be the other way and the Crows were going to kind of turn the tables and get stuck into Rioli, and knowing that he's very fiery and can bounce
Mm.
back. So nonetheless, the Showdown's a game I look forward to every year. But this one's set up beautifully. The Crows are the far better side, but the power have proved that they love the big games. It's going to be different without Rioli. I think everyone was anticipating that to be a major story. But yeah, there's a massive chance always in this contest. It's always close, and yeah, bring on Saturday night. Keen as Group One racing at Morphettville straight into Adelaide Oval. I wish I was up.
Adelaide fans are going to be up and about, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Rushing.
Now, on everything happening with Rioli, I know it's a very topical subject, so I certainly don't want us to be speaking from a place of privilege. He obviously cops a lot of racial abuse, which we do not have the time for, nor do we have the time for violent threats. But at what point do you think that what happens on the field stays on the field? These threats that have happened against the Geelong player and the Essendon player happened last season, firstly, and then earlier this season, and weren't reported by the player nor the teams. Should the AFL have investigated it and then sanctioned him accordingly, or should it have been let sleeping dogs lie?
Well, I guess it's who you ask that question. If you asked players from the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s, they'd tell you that everything did stay out on the field. It was part of the game. It was but yeah, like you said, when certain things when you're threatening someone's livelihood, and there's lines that you can cross, and I do believe investigations probably should have been made into those claims, and I think that's why Willie Rioli's not playing this week, because it's not the first time it's happened. And yeah, it's disappointing because, as I said, he's such a big part of that team. The way he provides the big momentum swings, he kicks big goals. He's actually had a superb season, so it's a big loss for Port Adelaide. But I think the right call was made, and they can make some adjustments accordingly, the AFL and Port Adelaide. And yeah, hopefully Willie Rioli's back next week, and we don't have to worry about those things in the game.
Mm,
It's no one,
definitely.
yeah, no one likes to be threatened, and you never know the intention. Is it a joke? Is it spur of the moment, or is it real? And regardless, it's been set. They've investigated it now, and hopefully they can just move on, and we can just watch them play footy.
Yeah, as you said, like there's no real knowing the context or the true meaning behind these things that are said. But at the end of the day, our footy players, both in AFL and NRL, you are role models to society, and each young person watching you, threats, violence, and anything should not ever be taken lightly. So I'm glad the AFL have sanctioned him the way they have.
Yeah, yeah. So as I said, hopefully it's just a quick one, and Willie Rioli's back, because no matter what goes on off the ball, I know everyone loves to watch him play because he's
Yeah.
he's a Rioli, and then
Those sneaky goals he
yeah,
gets,
yeah,
heartbreakers.
they're known for doing amazing things on the field. So as long as we can have the Riolis out there, it's the game's a better game.
Yeah. Now, I want to hear what is your highlight. I don't want to hear UFC racing highlights. Tell me your one
But for this weekend,
this weekend.
oh, it's got to be the Dan Mar story. Seeing the Limbs horses back, I think it's a very special story, and yeah, it's a very competitive race too. I think, as I said, War Machine and LOU, they're no slouches. They're going to be coming from different parts of the track, and I just think though that Limbs Del Toro can lead from the front and can really match motors with LOU, and let's hope that Dan Mar can get a winner on the board at Caulfield and really kick off and provide some momentum to his new story that's kicked off here in Melbourne.
Mm.
It's great to see, and as I said before, that's for me is what racing's about. It's about those stories of comeback, of facing the fire, and coming back bigger and better. And we've seen it with horses, and we get to see it now with trainers and jockeys too.
Yeah, it's going to be a great storyline over the weekend, that's for sure. For me, all eyes are on the Hollandale. Is it going to be renamed the Archibald Cup? They've got Bois d'Argent, they've got Faulkner Park. Both will probably target the Doomben Cup. So, launch pad for the Winter Carnival. We are straight into all of the action. So, we've got a lot of racing coming up this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be at the Ascot Vale Hotel. I'll be at for my brother's engagement. Both my brothers decided they're going to get married this year.
Running theme, are you next?
Yeah, well, not yet. Not yet. But yeah, it'll be a good day, and we'll have the races on, and I'm sure Paddy will be cheering home the Dan Mar horses too. I think he's Singapore through and through. So yeah, it'd be a good weekend. There's sport left, right, and center, and can't wait to get stuck into it. It's what I love to do. It's what I love to do is just watch sport and get right amongst it. And yeah, I think the racing. I will be honest. The UFC is great, but racing this time of year, once you come out of those autumn carnivals and we start looking at every corner of this country, it gets so exciting. And yeah, let's do it again.
Yeah, let's go. All right, well, thank you so much for your time again, Mick, and enjoy the family engagement party.
You too. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, I will.